Welcome to the Unlock Your Genius Zone podcast. I have today with me Ismenia Ginebra, and she has been a client of mine since the beginning of February. We've been working together for quite some time, and it's been a delight to see her develop into the coach she is today. And Ismenia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ina, for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I'm excited for our conversation as well. Ismenia is a mindset and nervous system regulation coach where she really helps women go on a path of self-discovery and self-study. So, Ismenia, can you tell us more about how you got to where you are now, why that particular niche, why it matters? Basically just your story. I would love to hear more.
Yeah. So my story begins 2 years ago. I was 6 months into my job after college, and I hit a point where I realized that I did not want to pursue the 5 to 10 year plan that I had given myself for when I graduated college. I studied clinical psychology and child development. I thought I was going to go down the therapist route, and my job really clarified that I didn't want to do that. And that was a very confusing and overwhelming time in my life because I saw a bridge that was going to take me to my adult life collapse in front of me. Right around this time, though, I happened to come across a retreat that was catered to my population, young women. And all I remember from that flyer from the retreat was figure out your next step. And that was exactly where I was in that point in my life. And on that retreat, I got that exact next step. And it came about in a very surprising and unexpected way. It was on the retreat that I was introduced to the world of coaching, and specifically coaching that integrates faith into its service. So I walked away from that retreat very intrigued and curious about this world of coaching. And from there, I started my business after I finished that certification program. Through a lot of twists and turns in that journey, I realized that the service I wanted to give to others was essentially a younger version of myself. Woman who graduates college, starts her life after it, and realizes maybe the thing I studied is not what I want to be doing. So that is why I do the work that I do. From the impact that coaching had on me, I want to give that to others who were in a similar position like myself.
That's so beautiful, Ismenia, and I'm hearing new parts of the story. When we have conversations, it's usually regarding specific strategy for your business or mindset around that. I don't often get the pleasure of just hearing you tell your story for a couple minutes at a time, which is just a delight because it made me realize something. We always can help the person the best that are a couple of steps behind us. We don't have to be a whole decade in front of them. We just have to be a little bit ahead of them. And that's what I think sets you apart as a life coach, is because you're in your 20s, you're in the same season of life as the women you're wanting to help. And that puts you in a very cool position where they can relate to you. They can also see you as somebody who they can learn from because you're just a little bit ahead. But I love the way your story is such a reflection of what you want to do in your coaching. So tell me more about the self-studying. When we were chatting and preparing for this interview, you were telling me all about the different areas of self-study you've gone through. How does that play into the work you do?
The retreat that I went on was actually my first exposure to self-study. The retreat had the topic of discerning your next step. For me, it was the first time I looked inward for my next step as opposed to outward. The part of the self-study on that retreat was learning about how our minds worked. How did God design our minds? How did God design our interests? And how do we discover those? So for me, that was such a crucial part in my journey of finding out what my next step was, tuning into the interests I had, the passions I was noticing that were developing, the thoughts I was having. That was a really new thing for me. From there, self-study continued in aspects of nutrition, learning about how God designed our physical body, how to nourish it. My recent self-study is nervous system regulation, and really learning about the way that our nervous system shows up in our day-to-day. I think self-study is such an important thing, especially when you're coming out of college where you were studying subjects, topics. The way I think about it, it's the things that you studied for in college are like the things, like clothes and accessories you put on yourself, but then you don't know the person who's wearing that. So to me, I really see self-study as the thing that can help women in their 20s because of the many years of schooling and studying things outside of themselves. It's time to shift the focus on you because there's a lot more answers to yourself and what you want to do in your life than you realize.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And as someone who is currently in my 20s and going through that, or having gone through that recently with college and then going deeper into who I really am and my identity and the self-study of it, there is so much power in what Ismenia is talking about. Because when you are in college, you have the syllabus, you have an exact set of things to study. But when it comes to studying yourself and really knowing what you want out of life, it's hard to know where to start. So what would you say to the woman that is feeling that same type of anxiety and lack of confidence around their next steps? How would you tell them to go about finding their next step in life?
That's a great question. And I would say that the first thing, as I think back to my own journey, I remember pulling out a Google Doc and just typing everything down. What fascinated me, what interests me, and what do I want to learn more about? Because again, when you're in that school setting, there's so much structure. You have to read this, take this test, write this essay. When you're out of college, when there isn't that, that's really the time to notice what is coming up for you interiorly. So I would say that is my first step for a woman who's feeling that way. Just notice yourself and what, I mean, it might even be the first time where you ask yourself that question. So that is a great first step because you're starting to unlock what you may have not given the time or space to allow to come to light.
Yeah, and when you have a full class load, you're studying and taking classes and tests and all of the things that encompass campus life. And your time is so full, you almost don't have breathing room. So what I'm hearing you say as well, Ismenia, is that you haven't even thought of that question since you were 16 years old, people asking you, where do you want to go for college or what do you want to do? You have to make a decision. You have to get in your applications next year and all of that pressure. And you almost maybe made that decision out of pressure or from other people's direction. But now you have grown into your own person. Like you are truly an adult. When you graduate college, you haven't really been given the skills to show up as one. So what would you say to the woman who is almost having that mid-20s identity crisis?
Yeah, I would say there is a lot of power in looking at things with curiosity instead of catastrophe. In those periods of our lives where we come across a realization like that, the way to move through that is to look at it with curiosity and wonder as opposed to overwhelm and stress. Moments like that need room to tell you something, and looking at it as the thing to reject or not look at is actually something you've shared with me before. You're coaching that things that are kept in the dark fester and grow, just like mushrooms. And things that could be scary to look at, once we bring them to the light, we can see them for what they are. That's what I would say. Let this identity crisis, as weird as it sounds, have the room for you to look at, because in looking at it, you'll be able to take a lot from what it's trying to tell you. And from there, get your insight that'll lead you to that next thing that you're looking for.
When we have those uncomfortable feelings, we want to hide them and kind of push them down and not really look at them or give them space because it makes us question our identities. We've had that identity of a college student or identity of I live in a dorm with these people. Now all of a sudden it's like I have to find a job. I have to provide for myself. All of the responsibility changes. and the identity changes. But if you give it space, that identity can grow into who you are meant to be. That's what I love about your coaching. You give people that space. The way you talk, the way that you communicate, it has such a calm presence to it. And that's what I'm excited for people to be able to experience. You actually have a workshop coming up very soon, don't you?
I do. It is a workshop on August 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern. And this workshop is essentially, and this is from the conversations I've been having with women who are in this stage of life where they just want to feel confident and feeling like they are equipped and capable for what their life holds after college. It's really interesting about the word confidence. And one of the definitions I came across was the feeling of self-assurance. One of the things that really stood out to me from that definition was the capability and skills aspect. I think that really just speaks to how women want to feel when they're in their life after college. They want to feel like they are equipped and capable for the thing that they worked towards. Whether that's the thing they're pursuing or not, but they just, even for moments in their 20s where they have that identity crisis, they want to feel equipped and capable of getting on the other side of that. So where this self-study piece comes in, it's actually interesting. A self-study thing I've been recently doing is nervous system regulation and learning about how our nervous system works and all the things that are responsible for, they control our stress response. They help us feel safe. When you engage in self-study and learn about yourself, you also get to learn the skills and capabilities that will help you steward your divine design properly. Being able to have those skills and abilities and be able to see that in yourself is what contributes to that confidence. So that is where my webinar is about and what it's catered.
I cannot wait for people to experience the August 1st webinar. I'll make sure that the link is in the description box, the show notes, all of the things. It's easy for people to just go and grab their spot. Now, something that came to mind as you were talking about confidence was the root of the word. One of my other clients recently told me this because she was also looking into the word confidence. She found out that it comes from confidant, like somebody you trust. So, or confidere is really the Latin root. So that means that you're trusting yourself. You're trusting the skills you have, and you're trusting that it is accumulating to a certain point in your life where it all comes together. One of the things that I know your people really struggle with is the job search, job applications, interviews, and they're told, okay, you're not experienced enough in this field, or you're not qualified here because you don't have 5 years of work experience. I'm sure that is very relatable. I worked a job for a total of 4 months of my life so far. I was an entrepreneur, all the rest of it, but I have been in a couple of interviews, like maybe 3 or 4. So I know the feeling. It was all before I turned 20, like when I was 19, 20 years old. And you have very little work experience at that point. So having that confidence that's innate, that doesn't come from 5 years of work experience or a resume that screams, I've done everything under the sun and I'm exactly the right person to be qualified to do this job. It's more about your presence, and it really does come from your nervous system. So I'm so excited for people to experience that in your coaching. As the people you are wanting to serve, as they're looking for this level of confidence, what is a myth or a mistake that you see with these women making all the time that you just want to debunk once and for all?
I appreciate the question, and I'll say one thing I see in my conversations with women in this stage of life is their deep desire to do the work that God has called for them. And they bring up how much prayer they're doing, and which is a beautiful thing, the ability to discern his voice and just wanting to do work that you feel very called to do. A lot of it comes from dedicated time to prayer. This time period can bring a lot of stress and overwhelm, and that adjustment of school life to adult life. And I'll hear prayers be referred to as the solution to resolve stress and overall uncomfortable feelings. And the thing about stress, as I mentioned earlier, that is something that's very closely connected to the nervous system. So yes, prayer is not to negate prayer anyway. It's just rounding out the supports that help with something like stress, like needing to know how does the nervous system play into our experiences of stress. So that is a belief that I really want women to understand, that there are, for stress and uncomfortable feelings, it's necessary to have a more, for lack of a better word, holistic approach. That's what I would say is a myth I see in women in this stage of life.
So, Ismenia, that was absolutely fascinating about the myth that women are currently believing and how they almost are using prayer as a way to not take action, even though it is a vital part of what we're supposed to be doing as Christians and as people who really want to follow God's plan. What I'm so curious about is your own journey with experiencing coaching. You've been in lots of different coaching containers. How did you start to take action in that area while keeping prayer as a top part of how you run your business and your life?
I would say that there comes a point where you have to accept that you don't know everything. You don't have the skills that you want for the ambitions that you have. So,
Yeah, tell me more. How has coaching played a part in your life with the who side of things instead of just focusing on how do I do this by myself?
hmm I would say that when you try to do things on your own, you feel your potential is stifled,
Mm.
because there comes a point where you need to accept that you don't have the skills and the abilities for the season you're in life, especially when you're coming out of college and into the real life. Like, there is a lot of things in your season of life after college that require a whole new skill set.
Yeah.
And so when I see that with, when it comes to coaches, like, they're people with expertise that you simply don't have. When you can find a who in your life, like find someone who can help you take those steps to where you feel like your interests and passions and ambitions, that's where you can feel like your potential and capacity for what you want to go after expands, because it's no longer up to you to figure it all out. Someone, in my instance, like coaches who have the experience and skill set that you are looking for. It doesn't say anything about you when you are seeking someone else to help you. If anything, it speaks to how much you want to grow as a person.
That makes so much sense. Many, you have wisdom beyond your years because you have sought out coaching in many different areas for the passion, the purpose God has put you on this earth as an entrepreneur, as a coach. You knew you needed certain skill sets and you needed somebody to guide you there. And
Mhm.
I've been so honored to be one of the people guiding.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious to know, how would you describe where you were when you first came to me back in February?
Sure, yeah. I think back to that time. I was at a point in business where I knew I had to expand or go out of my comfort zone. I was in a process of figuring out who did I want to serve. I had ideas, but I needed the skill set to take action on all these ideas that I had. And when I met you, it was at the point where you were talking about your own pivot into what you're doing right now. It was honestly like good time, God's timing, I think, with what you were pursuing in your business and what I was feeling I needed support with. It really appealed to me, trusting ideas and taking action towards them. That really spoke to me, and that's why I pursued working with you.
I love to hear that because it's highly encouraging to hear that there was a reason why God put us together. It makes me think of how much action you have taken since February. You have started to become one of the most consistent people posting on social media, telling your story, creating content, really just speaking from your heart. You are in conversations with people, you have leads, you are taking so much amazing action. One thing that I'm also very curious about is what were some of those moments that you felt defeated or you were in that valley of despair and you felt like there wasn't a way out, but there was something that a coach said or that we had a conversation about in Voxer that really stood out to you? What would be one of those memories, would you say?
Yeah, I honestly, I would say it was my first experience of the Valley of Despair, which means people I have there have been more, but having the first being in the Valley in despair for the first time, it feels like you're in the wrong place when you're in a season of life like that.
Yeah.
In our Voxer coaching, for you to one really have the bird's eye view of my journey and see like all the actions you've been taking have led you to a place where you're experiencing the discomfort of expanding your comfort zone. So I think ultimately to really have my experience be validated in the entrepreneurial journey by someone like you who has had more experience in entrepreneurship than I have has was really a moment for me that helped me embrace that part of the experience and persevere through it, knowing that it's a part of the journey.
Very well said. And it really is part of the journey. I think the exact thing I said to you in that Voxer message was every entrepreneur goes through the valley of despair, no matter what level you're at, like whether you have reached your six-figure business yet, or seven figures, or eight figures, it just looks different. And it
Mhm.
goes back to our conversation earlier about resisting those feelings, resisting that feeling of uncertainty or the identity crisis, and
Yeah.
just giving yourself space and acknowledging, okay, it's actually okay that I'm feeling like this. It means that I care. There's a purpose behind what I'm doing, and it's for a greater purpose. Like that, I actually need to celebrate the discomfort because it means that I'm growing. It's like the growing. You have been such an actionable person, Ismenia, and I have loved working together because you take what I say to heart, take it and run with it and give it a good chance. And that just means so much to me as a coach because it
Yeah.
shows that you trust me. And then, secondly, you are learning to trust yourself. My greatest goal is that people can see their own ideas, trust them, and take so much action that they fail, that they succeed, that they learn and grow who they're meant to be along the way. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. I think that would be so encouraging for others to hear that they're not alone in
Yeah, for
despair.
sure.
So, to wrap up, I always ask my interviewees, my guests on the podcast, whether they're clients or not, how would you describe your genius zone? Because really, what this is all about is unlocking your genius zone. That's why I do the work that I do. How would you describe
Yeah.
your genius zone now, Isminia?
I would describe my genius zone as making the 20s in your life years that empower you instead of deflate you, or are just years that you feel like are a waste or were just you not knowing what you were doing. I would say my genius zone is really using the last easiest period of our life. Yeah, this statistic came from a book that I have read over the course of my business journey. It's called The Defining Decade by Dr. Meg Jay. There's a chapter that talks about the growth spurt that our brains go through from the time of adolescence up until the end of our 20s. And it's very similar to the growth spurt that we experience as infants and young children. That's why we can go from infants that to children that can talk full sentences. It's because our brains over prepare by giving us so many neurons for us to make an abundance of connections. It was only in the 1990s where they realized that same developmental period in infancy, early childhood happens again in our adolescence to late 20s. So essentially, when we have an abundance of neurons, you have the opportunity for things to be easy because our brains can make a connection so quickly. So,
Yeah.
in fact, it's in the book that never again will it be easy to become the people that we want to be in our
Interesting.
20s.
If you have the awareness, if you have a guide, who can really help you make the most of it, then you
Yeah.
are then able to feel like your decade of destiny or the 20s was worth it. That you don't arrive at
Yeah.
age 30 thinking, my goodness, what did I do with my life? My life is over, early midlife crisis moment.
Yeah.
In
I would.
summary, I would agree that's your genius zone. Helping
Mhm.
women do the self-study needed to make the most of their 20s so that they are equipped to step into who they're meant to be. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast because you have unlocked your genius zone. You are stepping into that woman yourself, and now you're guiding others to do so as well. So,
Yeah.
where can people find you, Ismenia?
The best way would be my Instagram. It's at Ismenia Ginebra, all lowercase, and there you will find what I offer and how I help women.
Awesome. And then I'll make sure that that link, as well as your new webinar about confidence, is in the description box in the show notes. And otherwise, I hope that everyone listening has the most beautiful day and you're inspired today.